When did I meet you? Do you remember?
When?
I don't even know where did we meet. Was it at a Pride? Was it at a nightclub? Or was it at...
I just feel like I've known you for years and years.
Mm. Well, I mean, that's factual because it's been years, but I don't know if it's been years and years and years and years, right?
Well, maybe you remember. What's the earliest memory you had of me? Maybe that will help me determine.
There's so many memories I have of you.
I said the earliest memory.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it was like New Haven Pride, and you were out. You know? And I mean, the earliest memories I have of you without meeting you in person is through...
Facebook, probably.
Well, no, I was going to say through your work at your art at True Colors. I had seen the arts. I'd seen your work at True Colors, the arts and
yes,
the cartoons and characters that you were drawing of kids.
My initial collaboration with True Colors was doing their summer program.
Mm-hmm.
They had a program called the Draguation, and they had some high school seniors that were going to be going off to college. So they did like a summer program thing, kind of, what was it? They had like, I guess, I don't know, for some of them might have been like their first drag performance. And so they got a chance to do drag on stage during their graduation ceremony, well, draguation rather. But there was like 4 of them that were like spotlighted, that they were the seniors that I guess they had been doing this high school program, and now they were going off to college. So then I guess, you know, they were off onto the world, I guess.
Right. Okay. So like a send-off.
So they had to do some images.
When you're queer kids, you have draguation. You don't have regular.
I've never heard of a draguation.
You don't have regular graduation. I mean, you do, but then you have your
it's
queer
kind of like
version.
having a queer prom.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I guess it was the same idea. Like, we're gonna do something that's specific to, you know, you and who you are. You know, and if you want to do drag, here's your chance to be on stage and
express yourself.
Exactly.
And because True Colors primarily catered to trans and non-binary and genderqueer and non-conforming programs.
Everybody, but I would imagine
it seemed like that. It seemed like that to me. I don't know.
But maybe just because it felt like a very safe place for them. You know. And I guess there's that whole idea of like, you know, being queer, like you can, you know, easily blend in certain territories that other people feel like they can't really do that. Right. Without feeling unsafe.
Right, ostracized and stuff.
Or things like that.
So I've seen the characters that you were drawing of the real life students.
Yes.
And then so Kamori Harrington, who was doing a program directing there of some sort, I asked her who drew it, and then she said, oh,
so you hadn't even met me.
I hadn't met you. And she's like, you don't know who Ricky Mestre is? Because you know she's, how dare you? Right. And I'm like, well, sorry, but it's a great art, so I like it. So then I saw you in person somewhere at like a Pride event or somewhere.
You know what?
And then that was like, oh, that's Ricky.
Pride.
Oh, Fairfield?
Because you had a whole segment.
Oh, yes.
Like outdoor stage. You had your whole like, must have been like a 15, 20-minute long kind of like setup.
Are you talking about in the parking lot?
Yeah.
Right. I set up a Pride festival there. With the vendors and the artists and the things. Right, okay.
Like in the afternoon, you were the kind of the cartoon before the main attraction. Like Trixie Mattel was going to be there that night.
Those were good times. Yeah, right. Good times.
Happy
and then
days.
from there, you were all over. And then I found out that you...
I was all over
prior, you know. As far as in my life...
Paying attention.
As far as in my life, you were all over my life from there. Any event I was at, I saw your work and was learning. And then I found out that you were...
Buses and billboards and...
Paintings. Right, yes, the billboard. That was awesome, too, that you had that billboard. And send me a picture of it so we can put it in the screen.
Sadly they took it down. They replaced it with some other nonsense.
That was fire.
But it's still on the bus, so if you're watching this, you may still see it fly by.
And then you do a whole art gallery, Pride, in Bridgeport.
Yes.
Which was fire. And then we did a piece, cover story on that during the pandemic.
Yes, that was during our virtual stage when we weren't sure how we were going to handle it. So like we were back and forth, like, are we going to do this virtually? Are we going to do this in person? And then, what do you call it? Because the whole shutdown happened in March. So by May, it was still like uncertain where things were going to go.
You have a vivid memory, wow.
I do, yeah, because I remember I was like, well, let me start planning things for a virtual show just in case, you know, I have to go that route. And if we end up being able to do it on stage and, you know, everything was going to be fine after, then at least we had that footage and we can use it for some other purpose.
Right.
So it worked out that I started early enough to kind of give myself time to not only communicate with people to get me footage or get people in the studio to record them, but then also like editing it together. Because the editing process usually takes a lot more time than filming it.
Of course it does. Don't remind me.
You got a half-hour-long video that you have to condense into 5 minutes.
Yes, don't remind me about that either. I have other works going on that I have to get to.
I know.
But then, so that's how I saw your Pulse piece, and then that was intense.
The what?
The Pulse piece, painting.
The Pulse piece. Yeah, well, no, the Pulse happened before.
I know, but I saw the painting of it for the first time during the virtual.
Really?
When I was
because you came to my studio.
Right. I came down to your studio, and then that's when I saw the other side of you as an artist, the one that's very culturally inspired by your ethnic background and your heritage.
There's definitely elements about that in there. And even like when I don't try to make it ethnic, somehow people kind of read it as, well, your model's a Puerto Rican. I said, no, actually that one's not, so.
Oh, they're not Puerto Rican?
Not all my models are Puerto Rican, no. In fact,
interesting.
I mean, there's a lot of them, you know.
There's some that are and some that aren't.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, there was times where, like my models, like I call them.
By models, you mean the paintings themselves?
Well, the people who pose for them.
Oh, the people who pose for them. So
Yes.
Is a lot of your work portraits
They're
of real
all-
people?
They're all like friends of mine.
Oh,
So
you have some fascinating friends.
I do. Some of them you might see on multiple paintings because we work very well together.
I didn't know that, so now that changes the dynamic of your work drastically.
How?
Yes. I thought that those paintings
With just my imagination.
of manifestations of whatever going on in your life at the time or whatever you saw.
Yes, I mean,
But I didn't know that they were inspired by real people.
Well, they
like
weren't
that
inspired by the real
but-
people. The real people just, you know, it's almost like it's having like a tool, you know, like if I want this to look realistic, I need to look at some kind of reference.
Oh, okay.
So
So they were references,
right,
but
because I photographed them.
so they were references,
Dressed up in the way that I
but
want
you
them to
put
be.
your own interpretations
Exactly.
to them.
So
Gotcha.
these are photographs of them that I took. So everything you're looking at is still part of my creation and part of my process of creating that image. So I'll think about what it is that I want to paint.
Gotcha.
You know, and I'll think about how I want it to be illustrated, and then I'll have someone pose for me in a variety of different ways, and then I'll figure out which way translates the best for me to convert onto a canvas, and then ultimately paint
And
it.
all those things have inherently different meanings than the actual reference.
What do you mean?
Well, obviously you said, well, I want to think about what I want to paint. And then through that process is more about your own personal.
Right. A lot of them are personal statements, you know, not necessarily, you know, as a cultural thing, but just as a personal thing, you know. So there are a lot of personal statements out there, and it's almost like sometimes I look at my work and I kind of interpret them as self-portraits, even if it doesn't look like me, I'm using someone else's likeness to interpret my story in this kind of way. You know, so a lot of the subject matters, a lot of the themes, you know, are something that's meaningful for me, or something that has impacted me, or something that, you know, or some personal issue, or something that just, whether it's my own personal story or something that's just been, that I've been affected by, or whatever, there's some element of myself in each one of those images that I've created. And unless someone commissions me to paint something, then I have to really get into their head, like, where do you want this to go?
Right.
So that, what do you feel from it? Because when I create something, I want to feel something from it when I look at it. I know what that painting means to me, you know, but art is always one of those things where, you know, I might have created it, but you may look at it from a different perspective and it means something totally different.
Okay.
Which has happened a lot of times where people interpret.
Very rarely, the common person, or even myself, has an opportunity to actually speak with an artist. Like, so if I see your painting somewhere, very, like, I can, like, that's the first time I can talk to you. Right.
What does it mean?
And get a better understanding.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of times I don't want to tell them, you know, my personal side of what that painting means, only because I don't want to take away from your experience with it. You know? So a lot of times I'll let them do the talking first. You know, what does this painting mean? What does that mean to you? You know, and kind of switch it around just to kind of, you know, see other people's perspectives on something that, you know, I know what it meant for me.
Right.
Why I made it, you know, what certain things signify, even if it's subtle and I'm the only one who knows really what's going on in that painting, you know, in my own head, in my own life, and that kind of a thing.
So commissioning you for this piece that we're going to show them is a totally different narrative, because it's more so of what I feel.
I've never painted this on my own. Let's just start with that.
Well, yes, when you told me that this is something that you would never paint on your own, I completely understood that for the obvious reasons.
I went as far as, like, I don't even want to sign it. I don't even want you to tag me to it. You know? But anyways.
Well, what did you do to prepare yourself once I told you what I wanted?
Well, obviously having a conversation with you was part of the process of preparing myself, because I really wanted to understand where it is you want me to go with this piece, you know? So just understanding, like, you know, because I can, you know, you can tell me, hey, can you draw a picture of a tree? And I'd say, sure. But if you say, I need this picture of a tree, but I want it to, like, you know, have some element in there, and I want this to, like, mean something, and this and that. Well, let's start thinking about these different things that you want to have, you know, the meaning behind it and stuff, so we can think differently. So I'm not just trying to, like, draw a picture of something, but now I'm trying to, like, you know, interpret it in a way that, you know, there's story behind it, there's emotion in it, you know, even if it's going to be like a cartoon, even, you know, those cartoon pieces, I'll do things that still have a lot of, like, depth and emotion to it, even if it's drawn very simplistic.
Right. But what I want to get to is how did you prepare yourself mentally and emotionally for the job?
Okay.
Considering the content of the piece.
Well, actually, I went through a period of time where I was trying to figure out, how do I decline the project? So I was trying to think of a nice way to say it to you, so you'll still feel nice about having me in your life.
Oh, so you were gonna? So
I had, like, entertained the idea about maybe I just shouldn't do this.
Okay, so so when I asked you, like, for a work made for hire, right? There's a process of, obviously you can say, no, I don't want to do this.
Of course.
And that's with any work.
Of course.
So what were the reasons why you may not have wanted to work on this piece for me?
I think when I was in that time period, I didn't want to do it because, well, one, it made me uncomfortable, for starters. Two, I just didn't want to you know,
Right.
I
And
felt
the
like
reason it made
there's
you
enough images of that. I don't, you know, it was almost like I don't need to make another one. It's already out there everywhere to some degree. But then it was almost like, okay, but what's different is I'm doing this in my style, and it's coming from my, you know, my hand creating it and whatever. So I guess having that personal attachment to it, just like I didn't want that attachment to this
because of the negative part of the history of that.
Well, I mean, that history is always going to be there, but it almost felt like, you know, me drawing it was me participating in it, and I think that's where I had to kind of get my mind, you know, out of this idea. Like I'm not, you know, sometimes I'll do performances and stuff like that. Like I'm not doing that to myself. You know what I mean? It was just more like let me rethink about what this is supposed to be for, and take myself out of it, because this is not about me. It's not my story. It's someone else's. They're just using me as, you know, as what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of like, you know, like when someone lip sync. Well, I need your voice because I can't sing, so I'm going to lip sync. So, you know, you needed an artist to kind of.
I can't draw, so I needed
so
you
you
to.
needed me to kind of like, you know, illustrate what you're thinking.
Right.
You want. You
Exactly.
know what I mean?
Exactly.
So when I, you know, started to think about it more like that, I was just like, you know what? Let me just treat it like this is someone else's story, and they need me to kind of depict it in a way that I can do it, and it's powerful, it's meaningful, it's timely, and all that kind of stuff. So I was just like, let me do it with the right, you know, state of mind, where I'm not doing this to make it on my own, because like I said, I would have never, but it's more like there's purpose behind it, there's education connected to it, and when I was thinking about it in that way, I think I felt better about participating, because I'm not doing this for fun, I'm doing this for purpose, you know, and I think that's kind of what steered me to kind of just like, okay, you know, it's an uncomfortable topic, you know, if you're sensitive to it. And I think that's what it was. I was very sensitive to it. And that's why, you know, it may have taken a little bit longer to do. I mean, those cartoon things, you know, I could have done it that night and like just whipped it out in like 45 minutes. You know what I mean? But it was just like, let me put some thought, let me make it nice and everything. And then all of a sudden I started thinking about it, and I was just like, this is really not a nice way to make this, you know? And, you know, I went through a series of like, you know, illustration that I had been since trash, because I was just like, let me not make it in even my style, because I don't want someone to get the wrong idea. Like I made this picture and, you know, and somehow that, you know, gets like connected with me.
Right.
You know,
Gotcha.
so I figured if I made it in a whole different style that doesn't even look like my own, and of course every time I'm trying to make it a different style, one, I wasn't successful because my style just kept seeping through it. And there was a 2, and I forgot. It wasn't much, and it actually made it harder, because now I'm like, you know, trying to do something that's outside of, it's trying to like get me to draw with my left hand. Like, no, I'm not left-handed, but I'm trying to like
right.
do something outside of.
And I chose you for a reason, because I liked your work.
Of course, and that's again where I had to kind of like remind myself, you know what, he asked me because, you know, it made sense out of the artist that you know, that a certain style that I had worked with what you were trying to depict, you know, so let me just do it in my style, because that's what I know how to do.
Right. And I thank you for it too.
You're welcome.
Because you're talking about that, there's a song on my album, right, about Stop Asian Hate. And so when I was recording the record, it was very painful and hard to record, because like when you're trying to empathize with the struggles of another community, like I remember kids at school when I was growing up, they would be called names, and people would mimic them and talk in animated voices as to how they thought Asian people sound, and making fun of accents and calling them words.
You know.
So when I was recording the song and trying to embody those things, I had to put myself in a position that like challenge my own biases as to how I view Asians, challenge all the times when maybe I wasn't being as respectful to the Asian community myself, you know? But I had to give that feeling in the song to showcase the whole point and meaning behind it and why the song is needed for me. And then of course there's just elements of dealing with my own experiences of being maybe stereotyped by other communities too as well, that I wanted to put in there to showcase like the understanding of everything and why we need change and people to be more conscious and respectful of stuff. So it's very like, I don't want to say like therapeutic or cathartic, but it's very like...
It is, you know, when maybe not therapeutic, it's not the right word, but I think when you were talking about doing that song, I mean, obviously your experiences are completely different from anybody who's Asian and what their experience has been.
Right.
You know, the same thing like with this piece, like, you know, my experiences are different from, you know, anybody who is black.
So working on this project, did you ever enter a thought process about the Latino colonization side of things versus like the Black African American Negro part of history?
No,
like,
because I don't think my mind went that way. I think I was doing it more in a sense that how do you say? Like I'm illustrating for someone else's perspective and experience, you know. So I want to do it, you know, in the way that I'm instructed to, because they understand what their experience
is, right.
They just need me to illustrate it.
Right,
So
but by working on this, has that, I don't know how much of your other art, would you do a piece like this from the Latino perspective as far as indigenous and colonization? And
I'd have
like
to put some
stuff.
thought to that.
Right,
I mean, I wouldn't rule it out, but it's not
on your list of
It's not-
to-do
I
list,
wouldn't-
but
yeah, I mean,
just
in the last 12 years, I've been focusing on queer art.
now that, you know, this was a whole process and very challenging and intense. Now that it's complete, what do you think of the final product that we're going to show them? Did it come out as something that you're content with?
That I'm what?
Content with?
I think as far as creating something with my...
Like, I'm the customer, I'm satisfied.
If you're satisfied, then I'm satisfied.
Right, okay,
You know?
gotcha. That's what I
would never,
meant.
put it this way, I would never submit something to a customer without me being satisfied with it first.
Right.
So that first draft that you were making reference to before, I felt pretty good about it. You know?
And nothing was wrong with the first draft.
No, but you
I had a certain
things in mind,
a certain depiction.
and I was able to kind of like tweak it so that it can be more about, you know, what you wanted it to say rather
Right.
than what I think.
Right.
Go with it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. The only thing is, when I saw the rough draft, I wanted the rough draft too.
Oh, that was fine. And that's why I gave it up.
I wanted the rough
There's
draft.
also that like quick pencil sketch, like I'm
Right.
gonna do something really fast.
Well, I wanted the evolution of the whole process,
Of course.
and I think that that's very valuable. You know, in the sense of storytelling and explaining
How
the
it
black
is.
the black experience, and I'm going to get more into that when we show the video. So I'm very excited for this because I want to use this for engagement with a particular demographic of folks, of course, but so that we can start I'll just be 100. Right now, where the nation is, they're discussing taking Black history out of schools. They're voting against critical race theory.
Let me ask you something.
They're,
I know when I was growing up, there wasn't any Black history. There was references made throughout history, like there were Black slaves. They came out, and very broad overview, and that happened, and then moving along. So I mean, it does get mentioned. When did they actually start implementing like a Black history class?
they haven't.
To this day, no.
They haven't really. So
Well, not maybe as an elective. Is that how
you
it's
can take
handled?
I haven't been working when you get to college, you can take a course in college and specialize in that. But
But in the
the learning process has to start much sooner.
Well, of course.
For any real equitable change.
Right. So.
Why do you think it's taking so long for laws to pass, for mindsets to change, for
Because we still have the same people.
actions and protests and personal agency? No one's really trying to get the ball rolling on.
Oh, I wouldn't say no one's trying to get the ball rolling.
I mean, plenty of people are trying to get the ball rolling,
Some
but
people are like trying to get
we
the
could
ball
be
rolling,
moving so much faster.
You're trying to roll it uphill.
If I had learned a lot about my own racial history at a much younger age, I wouldn't be so distraught and traumatized by it now as an adult. If I had learned about this when I was young and able to understand it.
Yeah, well, okay, let me ask you something. So you said you were a little bit more distraught learning about it later in life.
Yes,
you think
because
you would have been just as distraught as a kid?
I think as a child.
Maybe more?
No, I don't think so. If certain things were explained to me younger in life, I can process it in an age-appropriate way. I could understand it, acknowledge it, be angry with it, be upset with it, and see this from all the different angles, right? Younger, and then that way, as I move into adulthood, I can work through this better. I can live my life in ways that creates change sooner. I could.
So, I mean, I'm sure at some point, there was a history class.
Rather than being kind of, fed lies through your whole childhood, and then this bomb is being dropped on you, all this trauma is being dropped on you, and now you're figuring out that there's reasons why the world isn't the way that it's supposed to be. If I was shown this when I was young, this is an image that can be viewed, and the viewer.
And it has a very innocent feel to it. And I think initially when you were like, and the song was being portrayed as like the villain, so right away my mind went into like, if I'm doing this in a cartoon kind of a way, what are ways to kind of depict who the villain is? Well, their eyes are a little bit more sinister looking. Maybe they have like,
Now, you're saying that this has an innocence to it, and I understand what you mean by that.
Well, yes.
But to me, there's nothing innocent about it at all.
So let me
right.
choose my words.
Well, I just wanted to put that out there for the viewer.
Yes, you're right.
Right. For me, because of who I am, and my background and my race, there's nothing innocent about this, right?
So let me
there's nothing
elaborate.
cute about it, There's people may joke or say those types of things, and myself as well, right? But none of that is there because this embodies, for many people, this is going to embody a certain amount of pain and frustration.
Of course.
Right.
When I said there's a certain innocence about it, I meant more in the.
But this is, I feel, in our current climate in society now, this is digestible for some people. And they can look at this and have the important conversations that need to be had. If I were to sit someone down and I say, I'm going to show you this, and then now we're going to discuss all the connections and references of this image to certain pinpoints throughout history and things like that, that can be achieved with this for me.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what I want to present for me. Do you feel the same, or?
No, absolutely. It's definitely one, and that was one of the things that I'm going to say loved. One of the things I love to do is create images that prompt like discussions, you know?
Right.
And, you know, whether they're something uncomfortable or just something that's, you know, meaningful, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't always have to be like, you know, so serious, but there's things that images can help with, you know, having people discuss it, you know what I mean? And I think that's why, you know, I like being around galleries when my work is up, and sometimes, you know, we don't even have like name badges, so that some people who don't know who I am and my name or my work or whatever, I'll just kind of like walk by when I see them talking about my work, and just to kind of hear like, you know, what are they saying?
Right.
What kind of discussion is happening? Because they're getting.
You might want to just a little insight to see what's
so
out there.
Kind of like, and then I'll kind of jump in and introduce myself, but otherwise I do like, you know, to listen to like, you know, people's perspective on things, you know, to see if, you know, one, if they align with artwork, if they align with where my mind was with it, or, you know, challenge me to think a different way, like, oh, you know what, that's really interesting that you thought of it that way, because that wasn't my intention when I was creating it, and I wasn't even thinking about that.
But now you have a different worldview
now
that you
I
can.
have a different, you know, view of that image because of something you said, you know.
Between my last documentary, which was called Black Art Hills, my last two EPs and album, which were very much about the past 3 to 4 years of racial unrest and the police brutality and the protest and all the things happening. And then this work of art here has been very, it's put my feelings into context for me to review, to go back and listen to and understand things. It almost all calms me now and soothes me, because before you may not necessarily know how to put how you feel into words, and you don't know how to put what you feel into thoughts. But once you do, now you have something.
As an artist, because you know your work is an art form in itself, you know, different from mine.
It feels like now I have something tangible.
That, but also you released it.
Yes, and I got to release it.
What is RacePlay? Everything you know about diversity. Everything you believe about inclusion. RacePlay is the bias that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. You are now plugged in. Hello, customer. Me give you my suit. Black man frighten me, but me need BBC. Man ain't gonna handle me.
Use that artistry and talent and just kind of like, I'm gonna take this thing that's bothering me and I'm gonna channel it into something that is there.
That's a beautiful way
Now
of saying
someone
it.
else-
Channeling it into something.
Of course,
Right.
you know, and now other people can go and they kind of react to it.
Right.
And
And
possibly
maybe
get a sense of, you know,
find their own way of.
find their own thing in it, but also kind of like sometimes they can see through it and they're like, I can feel the pain of this painting. You know what I mean? Don't know.
Another reason that's important. Another reason that's important to me is because throughout my whole life, right? Whenever I'm upset with someone being prejudiced, whenever I'm upset with someone being racist, whenever I'm upset with someone being homophobic, there's always someone in the room that says, oh, well, don't feel that way, or maybe it wasn't what you thought it was. Or not everyone does that, you know. It's just that one person, as if like that makes it any better. You know what I'm saying? So this, like you said, this is a way to channel it in a way. This is a way to channel it in a way where no one can dictate my thoughts. No one can dictate my ideas. No one can tell me that
it's your own
I'm
creation.
invalid. No one can say that my thoughts and feelings aren't valid and that, you know, oh, don't be upset. But how can you not be upset by those things? You know what I'm saying? So has there been any, I'm sure there's been times where you experience something as a Latino male or whatever, and someone says, well, don't be mad, don't be frustrated, don't be angry with that.
No, I think what's interesting, except for, not for some reason, because I know the reason, a lot of people actually are more surprised to find out that I am Puerto Rican.
Well, that's a whole thing too. And that's
it's kind of like, you know, I'll never forget one experience.
well, let me ask you a serious question, if you don't mind.
No,
Do
the
you?
whole thing was serious.
Well, right. Do you identify as Puerto Rican or do you identify as white?
Oh, I identify as Puerto Rican for sure.
Okay.
I don't
right.
hide that. I'm not like ashamed of it or tried to like anything. I'm proud of it.
Well, right. I'm just curious because some Latinos consider themselves white, or they come to America to, I guess, assimilate into whiteness.
I mean, I think when you think about like the old school versions of, you know, people, because the thing is with Puerto Ricans, because we're mixed with three different cultures, visually, we look one extreme to the other. You know what I mean? There's some Puerto Ricans that are like very pale, and then there's some that are very dark.
Right.
You know, and then everything in between. And what's interesting is, you know, if you probably talk to somebody from, you know, that's probably like in their 70s or so at this point, you know, before Puerto Rican was even a category to like
Right.
check off on whatever it was that you had to do, it was like, well, where do you fall in line with, you know? And in my case, because I think as a kid, I remember having to like check off something, and
Of
like
course.
you were either black or you're white.
Right.
So I'm gonna say I'm white, you know?
Right. Interesting. But how did that make you feel at the time?
I mean, I was too young to really understand the weight of that kind of a question, but ultimately, growing up, they started adding the Hispanic category into it. So I was like, okay, now I can put Hispanic. That makes more sense for me.
Right.
You know?
Interesting.
And then they kept adding on to a Pacific Islander or, you know, whatever other categories there were, which I think, you know, probably upset some people, but for me, I just know like when they added that little box that said Hispanic, it just felt more right for me to like check that off. Because growing up, I knew I was Puerto Rican for some reason in my mind, and maybe this was the whole idea of like growing up as a kid. You know, you were, you know, all the Puerto Ricans and blacks were kind of like, you know, together. It was just like white felt separate from me.
Right. Okay.
And I kind of felt like I'm not white, you know, but I have to check off something, you know, and I can't say I'm black because I'm not, but I don't feel like I'm white, even though visually I may kind of
Be more fair-skinned, or
yeah. It would,
right.
So I mean, I would have to put white, you know, growing up for a little while. I don't even remember at what point they added the Hispanic category into it, and I don't remember what I was even filling out that needed that information, but maybe
That'll do it. How often do you feel like colorism's talked about?
Is it talked about?
Or do you feel like
Well,
it's talked
I'm
about?
always talking about colors.
Do you feel like it's talked about enough?
I don't know how to answer that, you know, because I think we are talking about it. And when it comes to like things like that, I mean, it goes along with, you know, like people who are trans, like, not to like compare the two things, but it just maybe the same feeling for me. It's kind of like, if you feel a certain type of way about something, it's almost like, I feel like I can't even talk to you about it because you're already presenting to me something that is showing me that you're already set in your ways and you don't even want to hear another perception of it. So, like, for me, it's like, I'm not gonna waste my time with somebody who, you know, doesn't want to hear it.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
I'm not gonna be the person to change your mind. So I'm gonna move on, and, you know, I'll discuss any topic with anybody who's willing to, you know, be open to a discussion, you know? So is it talked about enough? I think I'm always open to talking about, you know, any topic to the best of my ability, because obviously I don't have all the answers. I don't have, you know, a lot of knowledge about, you know, certain fields. But from what I do know and what I can contribute, I'm willing to share. And, you know, in the process, I learned something too.
Thank you, Ricky.
You're welcome. Let's move it
Right,
along.
let's put it on
while
the
I
screen.
go over there to stop the tape, you can keep talking because you might be
I'm ready. I'm ready to do the work. I'm ready.
Okay. You want me to stop?
Sure, we can flash forward and show you.
Okay, so, and cut. What's that?
Perfect.
That's what I do.
All right. Well.
Hold on. I'm not mic'd up.
Oh, you're not mic'd. Okay.
Ta-da!
Right. Well, there they are.
We
Now,
talked about it for an hour. We might as well let everybody know what we were talking about. I mean, I thought if we just started with the picture, then we can just...
now I'll be 100, right?
But now you got all this extra footage. Now you got another hour long of footage.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's a cut down to 5 minutes.
No, it's okay. Now, I'll be real with you.
Be real with me.
I've had time
To...
to process my feelings, think about it 101 times over and over and over. So when I look at this, I've had time to navigate all my feelings, okay? Someone seeing this image for the first time may not be in their same process of what I will say in racial healing. I've had time to read on the historical aspects. I've had time to watch and view content on the historical aspects. I've had time to think about and dwell about my own experiences in my life that I've gone through, trials and tribulations. Again, to understand and come to terms with my own, not just healing, but experiences of things that I've just gone through where people were hateful. I've had time to process all that. So when I look at this, it's not as jarring to me as if I maybe seen it 5 or 6 years ago, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? And I was just at a museum last year, a lynching museum, which is in the documentary.
Really?
Right. And going through and seeing everything again.
Where do they have a lynching museum?
In Alabama.
Oh, that's why.
Right.
It's Alabama before.
It's called the Legacy Museum, and it's actually a very beautifully set up museum.
Like the one we have over here for the...
Right, don't tell me about it. Because, and I'm going to explain to you why not to tell me about that museum that's next door to you yet. Walking through that museum was re-traumatizing, right?
And I think for someone like you, yes, it would be. You know, for me, it was more just a reinforcement of what happened in a way that goes into more detail, you know, than I ever really knew or understood, you know, and especially doing it with a tour guide, you know, because
Now you have someone who can talk about the context.
someone who understands these things and is able to, like, you know, express what it is we're actually looking at and how certain things were used, you know, and you know, I guess because I don't know, it's a really, it's a hard conversation to have with somebody about these kind of topics when it's not your own experience. So I mean, for me, it's more just like I just have to learn to, like, listen to it and hear, you know, what actually did go on, you know.
Right.
And just
And how that translates to certain things as to the way they are now. Right. This is all the horrors of white supremacy in my mind, right? This is all the times that I've been called terrible names, microaggressions. This, right now, what I'm going through is figuring out all the parts in my life where I was dealing with internalized anti-blackness. Like, it took me a long time to consider myself, like, beautiful, consider myself like I can be desirable as a black man in America, type of things. Like, I never thought of myself as
successful and things
or
like
successful. I never thought of myself as being able to be confident in certain things, you know, just for being black. Like, I had to get over this mentality of that, like,
that black being black is a hindrance for
that black being bad. I mean, when you're told all your life that black is bad, black is stereotypes, black is tropes, black is violent, black is something to be feared, black is ugly, anti-black, anti-black, anti-black.
Where did you grow up? Where are you hearing these things?
I grew up in Virginia, which could explain some of it. I also grew up in Georgia, which could explain some of it. But that's a whole nother story, and they can get that later. And that might not be every black person's experience, you know, it just happens to be mine. So,
and whoever we
and this
connect
can
with it,
hopefully connect with it and get what they need from it down the road, you know what I mean? Personally, for me, you know, if I have children, or were to have children, I haven't made any type of decisions like that in my life, or just being a mentor, or within the other works that I do, hopefully I could be able to sit down and explain basically racial history with this image. And that shouldn't be able to,
teacher.
And that shouldn't be a problem. To me, this image should be able to do that. Sit down
I think
with the youth.
If nothing else, it at least opens up a discussion. You
Bingo,
know?
there we go.
And I think, you know, because this
Right.
is this.
Or
obviously this
I envision, as a visionary, I hope society gets to a place where they should be able to sit down with this image or something like it and discuss racism in a deep, educational, learning method and way that's going to benefit society. Like, please help us all, if we cannot get to a place like that, to just simply sit and to discuss racism by anything. I mean, if this is, you know, this could be some inspiration or a starting point to that.
Well, I mean, I think with the whole idea that you were talking about, that you can't take a class like this until you get to college, you know, I think.
Well, college is the only place where it's being offered, right? We have to figure out the starting point of coming a little bit earlier and then what things to talk about maybe just a little bit earlier than then, right? And the things just to talk about a little bit earlier and then. I was talking to my friend recently the other day, and she said when her daughter was 6, dark-skinned black child, she said, "Oh, mommy, how do I take this off?" And she pointed to her arm, but she was talking about her skin color. How do I take my skin color off, right? So at 6, kids are already learning and internalizing certain things about themselves and what they see and the adults around them and how the adults behave, right? They may not be able to put it into words, but they're seeing it, they're consuming it, and they're making their own ideas of it, right? I think, the government did some survey, and most parents, the age as to when they should start actually discussing race was way later than when children actually know about race. So that to me is very crucial as to how do we devise ways
it starts at home.
Oh yes, it does. It starts at home, right?
But that means, okay, so
have you seen the doll test is? Right, where they sit black kids down and they say, which is the pretty doll, which is the ugly doll, which is the successful doll, which is the whatever doll, right? And then they start showing all their anti-blackness at like a really, really young age, right? I know for me, I didn't realize I was black and that there was some difference there. Probably about 7 or 8 is when you start to notice certain things. And then especially when I was as a teenager, hitting puberty, kind of getting taller, right? And even though I was by no means a man, people treated me like a black man, right? They treated me like a threat. They treated me like, around the white women as damsels in distress, and black men are something to stay away from and things. But I'm just hitting puberty, but I was already understanding those projections in a way. You know what I'm saying? So I knew that. And then once I was maybe 18 coming into college is when I finally started to be more confident in my looks, right? Because I didn't necessarily see myself being portrayed as desirable, like on TV and in content in the media as much growing up. Usually mostly saw white families on TV at that time. There was only not many black superheroes. There definitely was not enough dolls and books to really see yourself represented. And the ones that they had were like just thrown together. They weren't made as nice. A lot of care wasn't taken into like the realism of the characters, you know what I'm saying? So I wanted to be the Batmans. I wanted to be the Spider-Mans and stuff. I didn't want to be whatever they had out as far as black content and characters, you know what I mean? I cleaned.
Well, you have to be this one because you're black.
Right. I love the Black Ranger. And it was like almost like it's all I had, but he was still cool.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
I like the green one. So.
I love Jax in Mortal Kombat, cool. Every Halloween I'm like, oh, well, I want to be a black character, and I'm like thinking really, really hard. Now there's so new original black characters.
Well, you had
I have to invest more time in paying attention to what's new coming out. So now that I can figure out who I like and have the options. Before it was like you just kind of only had what was fed to you. You know what I'm saying? How many black-owned animation companies or things was there? Right? But over time, and once I realized the causes and meanings behind it, I didn't want to be Iron Man. I don't want to be Spider-Man. I don't want to be Batman. I want to be Blade. I want to be black characters. I want to be.
Because
I want to be
established that this person is a black character. That's why I wanted to.
Right, and not only did I want to.
Be the Little Mermaid too, if you wanted to.
Yes, I can be the Little Mermaid if I want to, but the point is, I wanted options.
Of course.
We were rooting for you, they say. Well, I was rooting for options. And now I'm glad there's more options to embody things or create your own character too, there's value in that as well. But to close this video, obviously he's holding cotton.
What am I doing that for? You said
Right now.
See it.
He's having, remember I told you I wanted the cotton candy, which is a subtle reference to the cotton fields.
I thought that was very...
All right, there's his name, Kool Kotton Kandy, right? He's in blackface, and the reference of the Kool Kotton Kandy is because one of the ways of mimicking black people during blackface and minstrel shows was that we were so jolly and happy with slavery, and we're so happy to be picking the cotton fields and all those things. So he's Kool Kotton Kandy. The blue eyes and the blonde hair is a reference to white supremacy, and especially with Hitler and his idea of what the racial purity is supposed to be. There's a little bit of that aspect there. You've got the prestigious blue jacket and the red political power tie, which is supposed to symbolize the elite and the system, right? And then I went with khaki pants because it kind of gives it a school uniform feel.
And then we topped it off with some red clown shoes.
Right, because racism and that mentality is quite ridiculous, isn't it? So, of course, he has the tail and devil's, I don't know if they call them devil's ears. What do they call those? Devil's horns. He has devil's horns and a devil's tail, because a slang term for the for white supremacy is blue-eyed devil. So there he is, and right, he's out there with his cotton candy, luring people into the evils, or at least the implicit biases that is anti-blackness. So there you have it, folks. That's Kool Kotton Kandy. Well, that's in my mind. That's the manifestation. That's the manifestation.
Well, let's talk about why you felt it was important to do this as a, before when I said there was an innocence to it, I was making reference to the idea that it looks like a kid's cartoon, and that's what my mind was steering towards when I said there was an innocence to it. It's more like, when you look at it without paying attention to the details, there's something very childlike about it.
Right, and that's purposely.
That childlike innocence is what I was,
it's what I wanted.
Right, so maybe you can tell our viewers.
And the reason I want that is because, going back to what I said, you internalize racism and anti-blackness at 6.
Okay.
Right?
We did talk
Which
about
is
this.
when this information needs to start being combated, right? When it needs to start being talked about, and yes, that is such a crucial stage.
Now,
when we look at the kids in the doll test, they were around that age. You know what I'm saying? There was even an update to that, right? Where instead of sitting kids down and asking them questions and getting their response, they put a doll that looked black, a doll that looked Latino, and a doll that looked white. And they set the dolls out. They sent all types of kids of different ethnic backgrounds, cultures, and races, right? And they just let the kids play and left the dolls out, right? But every creed and color and culture of kids, including the black ones, all treated the black doll differently than how they treated the Latino doll and the white doll. Oftentimes the black doll was never put back with the rest of the toys. The black doll, with the way they interacted with it, was more violent. Like they would sit the black doll in the cooking pot, like they were cooking the black doll, smacking it around, right? They would treat the white doll and the Latino doll much nicer and things like that. And then so the psychologist would sit back and just take note of that and wonder why that was, but we know the answer. You know what I'm saying? So that's why this conversation at this age and stage to start combating those things is very, very, very important. And that update to that was in like maybe 2017 or 18. You know what I'm saying? I would love to see how a test for adults would be, but how would you devise it? You know what I'm saying? Because now we're more in tune and conscious, and which makes us more capable of denying our real thoughts. You know what I'm saying?
So I mean, if it's done in a way that's
because
like,
things happen to me where I'm put in positions to challenge my worldviews, right? Mm-hmm. And now sometimes there's more of a want or need to say, no, not me. I couldn't possibly be that way, and it couldn't be for such and such a reasons,
you're
right?
put in a position where you
To be
like,
right. You know what I'm saying? But with the child, they're less likely to do that, I think.
They won't try to kind of like, they won't try to interpret what experiment am I part of, and
right.
Which way do they want it to go,
right.
and which way do I want to steer it so that I come out looking
good, yes. or more acceptable to society, or more, right, you know what I mean? So that would be the fascinating, like, how do we do a doll test for adults? Now, I know there was a hesitation with the police. They used to do those trainings, the civilian training thingies, where, oh, it's a bad guy, shoot. Oh, it's not a bad guy, wait, right? I know I had read one study where it was like, there was always that, if a black person popped up, there was always that more inclined to shoot.
And then it's like that video game.
Right. Because you saw a black person, so you were more inclined to shoot, right? And that was like a,
because I
that was like an
idea
implicit bias test.
Black people are more threatening.
But see, that's the, I mean, right, and we know the racial stereotype behind that and the reason for it, right? But that was like an implicit bias test for cops to see if they were more inclined to shoot if it was a black person versus a white person or an Asian person, or et cetera, et cetera. Or maybe if it's because the attire, the way they express themselves and the clothing and things, not actual threats that they need to, you know what I mean?
I mean, the way people dress can, plays a role, is what when people see a hoodie.
Is she not a threat because it's a woman? Oh, but she was the threat, and darn, you know what I mean? So
you're wearing a suit, it's different.
Right. We've socialized suits into being this form of.
So he's a respectable black.
Right.
Years ago, when I was in college, I remember.
See how respectable he is?
Yeah. There was a time that I was on the city bus, and I was going from my house to school, and I couldn't get a ride, so I said, I'm just going to have to take the city bus and get down there because I needed to go. There was a bus driver who was used to seeing me get on that bus because I would get on that same bus to go downtown, and from downtown get on a different bus to go to the mall and whatnot. Anyways, he pulled over for me, and I got into the bus, and as I'm about to sit down, he's about to pull out back into the street, and some car races to try to beat him so that he doesn't have to get behind the bus as it's.
Of course, right. Who wants to be behind a bus? No shade.
Not this driver. Well, then he turns around and looks at me. He was just like, "Oh, did you see that guy? What he just did?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You know who does that? The Puerto Ricans."
No, he didn't say that. No, he didn't. Not realizing that you're Puerto Rican.
Exactly.
Because, right, of course.
Because I don't.
You weren't presenting. Now, they call that, to be honest, I haven't looked into it enough, but they call that white passing, which is like a colorist thing. I mean, we have it too in the black community. We have mulattoes and the red bones and the high yellows and the dark skins and all that. Like, so we have colorism issues in black community and spaces, and again, the whole anti-blackness thing, right? And then so they used to have the brown paper bag test, which is something that they use to pit black people against other black people. The brown paper bag test is you couldn't enter an event or a social gathering or restaurant if you were darker than the brown paper bag. Yes, this is true.
I believe it.
Right. So, a brown paper bag test,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, at first I didn't know where you were going with it.
Right.
All of a sudden, as you kept going, I was like,
So-
they had to put their hand next to it and
And then determine, how horrific. So anyways, going back, so he thought he was in the company, I'm not gonna make you assume what his racial makeup was, but he probably assumed he was within company
Yes, exactly.
that was comfortable to
He would never
him.
have said that otherwise.
Right, and if you were a more dark-skinned Latino man, I highly doubt that would have been,
He wouldn't even-
or he would have at least thought twice
Well,
about saying.
'cause, I mean, he wasn't the friendliest bus driver. but he knew me taking that bus a number of times to recognize me, to at least, kind of be polite. But but it was just weird. Ever since I told him I was Puerto Rican, he would open the door for me and just let me put my change there. He didn't want to say a word to me after that.
You damn Skippy.
So I don't know if it was from embarrassment or like these are the fuckers that I hate. So I'm not talking to him anymore.
Well, I hope maybe he just learned his lesson. Let's hope.
I mean, it was 100 years ago. So
It wasn't racism, Ricky. It wasn't prejudice. Maybe you're overreacting. Yeah, that's a lot. I'm going to wrap this up
I know.
with the fact that I've been a school bus monitor since the pandemic. I don't really tell people that. The reason I don't is because I'm gay. And so when you're gay, one of the things they say is that you're grooming kids, you're corrupting the kids, and all that stuff. So I don't really tell a lot of people that I'm a school bus monitor because I already know the things, and a black man.
on
So
public television.
right,
We're live, by the way.
so black and gay. Oh no, the children.
Yeah,
we have to we have to save the kids from this guy. So
Bus
sorry.
driver for all white kids.
But there's this student, she's the darkest in the class, and every day it just irks my nerves. But I don't want to pass my trauma down to the kids, my own personal things down to the kids. But every day she gets on the bus with this white doll. This white doll. And I'm thinking in my head, and she's around the age of 5 and 6, where this is a very
Little kids.
this is like pre-K, kindergarten, first to school. So these are the babies that are being very impacted by like the TikTok videos and what they see on TV and the cartoons and the messages and all those things when they should be learning about this. This is that very crucial stage, which probably impacted me.
At least introduce it to them.
Right. But I'm sure this plays an impact in the timing of my expression at the moment.
Okay, so the little girl goes into your bus.
And she has this white doll. And I question why the parents...
Did you buy her a black doll?
Hold on. I question why the parents... I question why the parents is whether allowing or encouraging this.
Or if she picked that herself, or...
I'm pretty sure she picked it herself because as a black kid at that age, I would have picked the same white doll too. Mommy, I want the white doll.
Which one do you want?
No, Mommy, I don't want the black doll. I don't want nothing black. I want what the white people have. I want to be treated how the white people are treated. I want to be respected how the white people are treated. Mommy, the message that sent, Mommy, I want to be white. She's prettier. She's accepted. I don't want black. I don't want nothing to do with it.
Hair and it's blonde.
Right. All those things, and then you learn and you grow and then you understand it all, right?
Gotcha.
Right. So this is taking place at this crucial moment right now in my life with this little girl on the bus, right? I'm not walking up to her mother to tell her how to parent her child. I'm not doing that, right? But I'm trying to figure out, is it within etiquette as being a school bus monitor? Is it proper etiquette
To inquire,
to
ask,
no,
to
not
talk about?
Is it within proper etiquette to gift this child with a beautiful black doll? Am I out of line? Is that unacceptable? Or should I say, screw the system, screw the job,
Well, see,
I'm willing to get fired,
No, okay.
take this beautiful black doll. Please do not go through the
Okay, so I think
through the mental.
that's kind of like do
If
what you
it-
wanted to do, and still whatever. Because if you would have just given her a doll, and all the other kids was like, "Oh, she got a doll, she got a toy," you know. But if it would have been Christmas and like these are the kids on my bus route, I have 8 of them or however many you have to transport. And you got them each one a thing, and hers just happened to be a black doll. You probably would have been able to like you know, maneuver around the end, you know, get your, you know, goal, which was to get this black doll already.
Right. Or am I overreacting?
I mean,
I'm just
I don't know if they're overreacting, but I think not knowing the circumstances that put that doll
right. Is a
in her
factor.
arms is kind of like, you know, maybe she wanted it. Maybe someone gave it to her. Maybe
I'm sure all the things.
I mean, because you don't know why she has it.
I know that the books they bring on to the school to read, to bring to home, has a little white girl on it. None of the books have Indians or Asians or stories that they bring home for homework. I know that when I board all the kids onto the bus and I see all the black parents wishing them off to school, waving, saying, "Hi, have a good day," when they get to the actual school, that there's nothing but white women who monitor them all day, which sends a message that
These are the people of power.
these are the people of knowledge. I understand that that's what's taking place when I ride the bus.
Well, I mean, is it a matter of this school not finding appropriate teachers of other cultures to work there, or?
Well, we definitely know that the schools have a lack of materials that explain the nuances of
I mean, the students, is it
the
mixed?
students are all types because everything's, what do they call them, magnet schools now? So the schools are all mixed and
far as the students
desegregated.
are
The schools are all mixed,
have-
desegregated, all types of kids are going to
Right.
the same school. But the people who actually teach them anything
There's
in
nobody of
school
color.
does not represent the demographic.
Yeah, the student body is not represented in the faculty.
Right. The demographics of the students is definitely not represented in the faculty. Not enough at
People
all.
of color just not looking to be teachers, or?
Well, it's not so much that they're maybe not looking for teachers. I think as a culture and a society in general, for some reason we just view, I don't know how white women became the face of school teaching, honestly.
But that's like from the 50s. It was like,
Right.
it was like being a nurse. Like if you're
Oh,
a white
right.
woman, you know, you can be a housewife, you could be a nurse, or you can be a teacher.
And then that translated over,
And it just
right.
kind of stayed because it was kind of like, well, I'm not a white woman, so I can't be either one of those things. You know, when a guy wanted to be a nurse, it was kind of like, that's a woman's position. You know what I mean? A white woman position.
Well,
on top of
first
that.
we have to first accept that school is a form of childcare, which is the first thing, right? Nobody wants to admit that, right? Oh, school's not daycare, but really it is.
I mean,
With the system that we have
it's
set
not
up.
when-
We have it set up so kids can go to school, so the parents can work. And
Well, yes,
that's daycare,
but it is.
you know? And yes, they do have to learn to read and to write and to know how to navigate the world, yes. But it's
divide.
It's a form of child care. Essentially, it's part of child care.
Yeah.
So
the teachers have a lot of.
So when you bring over the dynamic of, like you said, the woman being in the home and all the things, and in the kitchens and the nurturers and the child care providers, of course they're going to be the school teachers when we have it set up that way in that dynamic. So yes, that makes sense as to how did all the white women become the teachers of the schools. But what they are not the holders of is of all knowledge. No, they're not. No one is. So.
Well, they are knowledgeable about what was taught to them. They are knowledgeable about their own personal experiences.
And what was taught to them. Woo! You're sending me. Shut the video down.
Folks, that's all the time we have for you today.
Right.
I hope you enjoyed our, what might be a 5-minute video. After it gets cut down from the hour and a half that was
No, it's going to be probably mostly this 2 hours. I enjoyed most of it.
2 hours? Who wants to sit through 2 hours listening to me talk?
If they get what they need to get. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, we're just my face.
Oh, sorry. And our mics.
You got those big, broad, brandly shoulders.
Those big black what? No, not for this video.
What? You didn't think a little race play would heal you? The trauma I induced will do more than just kill you. No colored people allowed. Oh, please, that's old. All I have to do is enforce a dress code. Yeah, that's it. No sombreros, no turbans, no kimonos, no dashikis. Aren't I just so deceiving? No ice, no trip, no wavy, no swag, no hip-hop fashion or silly do-rags. Yes. In fact, show me where I said that black lives should be deceased. All I said is I really support the police. I don't even need the Confederate flag. I can just weaponize the newest national flag. Every house in small towns will back the red, white, and blue. Yes, that's it. Close your eyes and think of it as a star-spangled noose. When the sun goes down, every Negro gets the memo that this town is more American than you, and you, and you, and you. So why don't you just go lift every voice and sing? I'll never amend your reparations. I haven't done anything. Do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do. Whistle while you twerk. Do-do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do-do-do.